Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough. And I was going to do this as a review, but since I'm crunched for time and I just watched the movie a while ago, so I decided, well, not really a whole lot to talk about, especially since, I already talked about a TV movie earlier this month, so I'm just going to do this as a quick vlog as a way to kind of get my thoughts out about this movie. Simply because it's really good. It's actually a good TV movie, and so there's not really a whole lot to talk about versus something like Ego Trip or Escape from Cluster Prime or some of the other TV movies that I've reviewed earlier this year. In this case, the TV movie was the second TV movie for Foster's, third, I guess, if you count the pilot movie, and the film is called Destination Imagination. This movie was released in 2008 on Thanksgiving. It won an Emmy, and it's often regarded as one of the better Cartoon Network-based movies, and so I went in with pretty high hopes, and honestly, yeah, I think it delivered it. So the overall plot is that this mysterious toy chest is dropped off at Foster's, and there's a letter on it specifically saying not to open it up, but Frankie gets pissed off with Harriman's attitude towards her, saying that she's just a slacker even though she does all the work around the house. So she decides, screw your rules, she opens up the toy chest, opens up in this alternate dimension where it's pretty much like a little kid's dream come to life. There's even a part where Frankie says something about it being like a little girl's dream come true, and I love how she says that when they show like what look like knockoff My Little Ponies. And then it made a bunch of sense when the movie's credits say, written by Lauren Faust, and I'm like... So Frankie keeps going to this alternate dimension every time she gets stressed out and needs a break, but ultimately there's some kind of being in this world that wants to keep her there for good. And so it's up to our main gang, we got Mac, Blue, Wilt, Eduardo, and Coco. They go inside the chest, and it turns out that there are some kind of nefarious intentions going on by some kind of force that we don't know about at first until ultimately it's revealed that the friend inside the chest is a sentient face. And the reason that it's just a face is because every single creature in this world is basically just inanimate toys without faces. It's like Toy Story meets Slender Man, or like a kid-friendly version of that one segment from Where the Dead Go to Die, where everyone didn't have a face. While all that adventure stuff is going on, we keep cutting back to the real world, and Harriman is trying to find a replacement Frankie. And there's this montage of all these different replacements that he goes through, and there's this one girl who just straight up looks like a clone of Frankie. Like, her hair is slightly different, and I love how her t-shirt has a little Mojo Jojo, because the real Frankie has a t-shirt with the Powerpuff Girls on it. Thought that was a cute little in-joke. There was a gender-bent version of Frankie in part of the montage. His name was Francis. And oddly enough, there was a Mary Poppins parody with a spoonful of cinnamon, and then he just slams the door on her. It's like, oh, okay. Harriman's an asshole in this movie. Like, the thing that sets Frankie over the edge is he literally says to her that her only purpose is to cook, clean, and take out the trash. So, and I feel like there's a reason for that. There needed to be some kind of level of cruelty that pushes her over the line to where she'd want to go open the chest and see what was inside it. So, I mean, he's an asshole, but he's an asshole for the sake of getting the plot to go forward, so I at least understand why they did that. And he eventually learns to not be such a, authoritarian at the end of it, so, I mean, that's something. I do think that the actual quest that the characters go on, like them traversing across these different parts of the land, and all the different world-building stuff they have in this little toy chest dimension with the main gang, I actually thought that was pretty cool. All the different little areas they go to, like there's this canyon filled with silly putty, and it makes these like silly putty zombie replicas of the gang. That was pretty neat. There's like a bridge they have to cross that's made of like piano keys, and the only way to get it to work is to have the tones make a melody. Thought that was pretty cool. The little town with all the toy people with these like wobbly ball cop men. There's like a ball pit river, and it basically, just like I said, it's like when Frankie says that it's like a little kid's dream come to life. And I think that really fits the theme, not just with the show, but that the movie was going for, the whole destination imagination, where this is a world where literally anything is possible. There's a part where they're like trying to go through this like Mario platformer world, and like I said, every single part of the movie that focused on that, because that is a big crux of the movie. A lot of the movie is their journey. I thought that was actually really cool, showing off all this different stuff, and it really does just go along with the theme of the show of imagination and doing whatever you wanted. And it feels like the people that made this movie had fun with that whole concept, and they just let everything run wild. In a way, it reminded me of two different movies. It reminded me of the Imaginationland trilogy from South Park, just by the way that everything looked. It was all just so imaginative and creative. Also the whole thing of a person feeling neglected and then they come across this like fantastic alternate universe and there's some kind of evil being that wants to keep them there for some reason. That reminded me of Coraline. And granted, it has less nightmare fuel than that, but I mean, still got a lot of creepy-ass imagery with the faceless people when that first shows up. One of my favorite plot beats in the movie is that they find out that Frankie was there because when she first gets there, there are these trees made of cardboard and there are flowers with crayons on them. So she writes something nasty about Harriman and then they find it later when the gang first ends up there and they read it and they're like, whoa, whoa, like she wrote a curse word or something, and I'm just like, oh, she was just using her sentence enhancers. It's interesting because you'd think it would just stop there, but no, it actually comes back later in the movie and Harriman actually sees it. So that not only wasn't an effective plot device, but it was actually a funny joke with a setup and payoff. I feel like all the main characters get a decent amount of screen time. Obviously, Mac is the leader of the bunch, and there's a part where they team up with one of the Face's alter egos, which is like this hero guy, who keeps trying to tell them to go back because everything that they're going to go up against is scary. But it shows that once they put their minds to it, they can all, you know, use their own specific talents to get them ahead. You know, even Eduardo's scarediness, which I thought that was neat. Everybody gets their own little like character beat in this movie, and that's something that really makes these kind of TV movies work. Or everyone who's in the main cast is given something to do, and no one's really just kind of hovering around in the background. Like, that was something I liked about Escape from Cluster Prime, and especially something I loved in Big Picture Show, is that it utilized all the characters to their full potential. I think as a kid, I didn't see the twist coming of, you know, the Face being a sentient creature. But one fake out that I actually really liked was when they get to Frankie, and Frankie thinks that they're just there because they want her to do all the stuff for them instead of, you know, actually caring about her well-being. But the Face gets rid of them. He says something about how they won't get between him and his Princess Frankie, and there's an easy Twitch simp joke in there, I guess. But he traps them inside like this little makeshift dollhouse of the Foster's house. And at first they think that they're just stuck back in the real world and the toy chest is gone. But then they eventually realize that they're inside a miniature and that they've been shrunken down. I totally forgot about that plot point, and I actually thought it was really well done. I thought it was a really effective fake out, because like I said, I totally forgot about that, and I thought that was a better twist than the thing about the Face being a face. Another thing I like about this movie is that the Face is technically the villain, but then you actually like break down why he does the things he does, and it's because he's lonely, because his owner's parents tried to cut him off from, you know, his creator, his human friend. And then he's been locked in there for so long, he's been lonely, and then finally he finds a friend in Frankie, and he tries way too hard to keep her attention, and then he tries to keep her all to himself, and then eventually, you know, he eventually snaps and becomes evil. But Frankie realizes that he doesn't do these things out of malice, he does it because he's lonely, and that he needed somebody to get him on the right track and, you know, show that you know, there's a world where there's tons of different friends to be made, and of course they eventually confide in him and he becomes a friend at Foster's at the very end. And I thought that was actually a good example of how to do a redemption for a villain, because it feels like over time this whole, like, you know, forced redemption arc thing has become a thing with a lot of shows nowadays. And not to say that it can't work, it totally can work. I mean, I said that I liked it when they did it with Spinell in the Steven Universe movie, but it feels like I preferred this kind of way of doing it, because they established that the Face doesn't have any malice at first, and then eventually he just let all of his hatred boil up inside of him, and then ultimately he just needed he just needed friends. He needed people who cared about him, and, you know, finally he steps out of the toy chest and into the world of Foster's, and, you know, there he's treated like just another friend. And I thought that was nice. Oh, I forgot to bring this up. Blue is a dumb asshole in this movie. Like, he's not just a dick in later episodes of the show, but he's a dumb dick. Like, they explain the whole thing about the Face being a face, and he still believes that there's like some evil king at work, because that was like something they were told all throughout the movie before then. The Face was telling them about some evil king that was trying to keep Frankie all to himself or whatever. And Blue still believes that there's an evil king after it's revealed that it was the Face the whole time. And it's like, wow, Blue's not only an asshole, he's a dumb asshole. And one more thing about this movie, yeah, Blue saying pissed or peeved. It was the Annie and Laurel of its day, I assure you. If anything, it reminded me of when they did it in Friendship is Magic, when Fluttershy says that she's peeved off. And it seriously reminded me of that, because I'm just like, well, that's another Lauren Faust-based thing, where a character says peeved and they treat it like it was a legit curse word. That's kind of awesome. Like I said earlier, this isn't the first Foster's movie. I mean, you can count the pilot, because that was like over an hour, I think. You know, that was like the first episode, and it was this like feature-length movie premiere that they did kind of thing. There's also Good Will Hunting, which I think was probably one of the darker things of the show, and I think it did good character building, because you actually got to see like the creators of some of the characters. Like you went down like Eduardo's backstory, and especially what they did with Will. Like that was actually really tragic. But this movie kind of embraces the whole imagination element of the show, and I really appreciated that. And it felt like, I also liked the whole narrative of Frankie finally getting treated with respect, because that's something that was an ongoing thing throughout the show, is that Frankie would just get the short end of the stick every single time in the show, and it felt like they finally did something about that. And it would have bugged me if they just hit the reset button, because at the end of the movie, it's like, okay, well, this is an episodic type show where, you know, a character will learn something at the end of one episode and then revert back to their previous ways in the next episode. Pretty much what they've done with Blue all throughout the course of this series as it went on. Thankfully, a friend/fan of the channel, Jared, who's requested a couple of different things. He requested the Jimmy Neutron PC game review. He pointed out that this was actually the last production for something Foster's related, so theoretically this could be a finale. I don't think it would really matter though, because, I mean, first of all, yeah, like he pointed out that Foster's is an episodic type show, so that kind of thing should have been expected. But also, it also isn't that bad, considering Foster's also had a legit finale after this point. You know, like I said, with the last episode being about Cheese moving into the house and Blue thinking that it's him being kicked out of the house. Like, it felt like they actually had multiple ways of trying to wrap up Foster's, which is just a step up compared to how Nickelodeon wraps up shows. I mean, he brought up how they screwed over Jimmy Neutron in the last season, which I totally forgot about that, and Jared, shout out to you for pointing that out. I forgot how they did Jimmy Neutron dirty, and Jimmy Neutron was one of their most popular things for a while. You know, SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Jimmy Neutron. That was like that was like the big three Nickelodeon had for a while, and yeah, I guess after a while Jimmy Neutron's numbers were doing badly, so then Nick just said screw it for Jimmy Neutron. That sucked. I mean, compared to how other shows were done, I mean, you know, I've said it before, and I'll probably, you know, do a video about Invader Zim soon enough again. But, you know, I mean, how they screwed over Invader Zim, Teenage Robot, a bunch of other shows, you know, just so that they could keep their favoritism in line and, you know, keep shows like iCarly and SpongeBob going. iCarly, which eventually ended and then was rebooted years later, and SpongeBob still going, and they're still making spin-offs to that. Yeah, it doesn't really bug me because, yeah, Foster's is an episodic show, and even if this wasn't supposed to be the finale, it's still good that Foster's at least got a proper finale, so yeah, this movie feels more in league with something like Stitch in Time, where it's like, the outcome doesn't really apply to the rest of the show, it's just kind of like a TV movie event, and, you know, the fact that it actually did get a proper wrap-up, that's at least good, so props to them on that one. And as it stands, yeah, the movie itself is still very entertaining. It's like an hour and 6 minutes or something like that, and none of it ever feels rushed, none of it drags on too long. It feels like just the right amount of stuff happens in this movie, and a lot of it is interesting, fascinating, visually pleasant to look at with all the creativity that's in this film. Characters are utilized well. You know, there's some good character arcs going on throughout it. There's some funny jokes all throughout it. I feel like this is definitely one of the better Cartoon Network-based movies. Big Picture Show is still obviously my favorite, and I would like to see what people think about this. Do you prefer the Foster's TV movies, or do you prefer the specials and the theatrical movie for Powerpuff Girls? Because those were the two big Craig McCracken shows of CN's early 2000s days. So yeah, I'd like to see what you guys have to say about that. As for what's coming up next for Media Wiz, I'm going to be doing 4 Christmas-related videos in December, and it's also going to be partnered with Red Ribbon Reviewers once again, so look forward to all of that. Until then, guys, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough.